The town of Redemption was a lie. Its name promised sanctuary, but the relentless, blistering heat of the Arizona Territory in 1879 delivered only dust and decay. The air was so dry it felt sharp in the lungs, tasting of alkali and the distant metallic tang of unburied sorrow. The sun, a white disk of malice in the endless sky, beat down on the corrugated tin roofs and the false front of the Last Chance Saloon. Billy the Kid, William H. Bonney and his crew rode into this furnace just after high noon. The horses, lathered and exhausted, kicked up plumes of fine red dust that coated the outlaws like a second skin. Billy, young and lithe in his worn leather vest, and Stetson scanned the silent street with his cold, penetrating blue eyes. He was looking for supplies, maybe a quick game of poker, and certainly not trouble. But trouble, as always, seemed to have been waiting for him. The only sign of life was a rickety, unpainted porch on the edge of the town square, overshadowed by a single dying cottonwood. On that porch sat a girl, no older than 15, her dress patched but clean. Her hands were folded neatly in her lap, and her face, pale beneath the desert tan, was turned toward the approaching riders, but her eyes, though wide open, were a milky, sightless blue. She was blind. Billy's horse, a restless chestnut mare, stopped a few yards from her porch. The jingle of the spurs on Billy's worn boots was the only sound in the oppressive stillness. Tom O'Folliard, ever watchful, rested his hand near the butt of his sidearm. The girl didn't flinch. It was as if she had been waiting for the exact frequency of their arrival. "You are the one they call the Kid, Billy." It wasn't a question. It was a simple declaration, spoken in a voice that was thin but carried the unshakable weight of absolute certainty. Billy dismounted, the movement fluid and silent. "Some folks call me that, ma'am, depending on which side of the law they're standing. You got business with me?" "I got justice business, and you're the only man around here who ain't wearing Sheriff Hargrove's colors." Billy walked closer, stopping on the bottom step. He pulled off his hat, letting the unforgiving sun strike his cropped dark hair. He could feel the weight of his gang's eyes, and the eyes of the few hidden townsfolk, on his back. "Hargrove? That fat dog runs this territory like his own backyard. What did he do? Steal your land?" "He stole my pa's life." The girl, Grace, finally lifted her head fully. The vacant focus of her eyes should have made her appear vulnerable, yet her jaw was set with a resolve that belied her frail appearance. "Deputy Rugar, Hargrove's right-hand thug, came to our ranch 2 nights ago. Said pa's water rights were forfeit." Pa stood his ground. Rugar put a bullet through his heart and smiled when he did it. Left him under the mesquite, said nobody would raise a fuss over a simple rancher. Her voice had the flat, hard quality of a stone skimmed across water. No break, just impact. Billy frowned, his usual easy smirk gone, replaced by a deep-set line of anger across his brow. He looked at the closed doors and windows of the main street. Hargrove's corruption was common knowledge, but cold-blooded murder over water rights crossed a line, even for this land. The sheriff didn't intervene. The sheriff, Mr. Bonney, was sitting in the Last Chance, counting his take. Rugar reports only to him. My pa saw Rugar cheat an old widow out of her inheritance. He was gonna testify. That was his true crime. A tense silence fell again, thicker now than the dust. The only sound was the distant, dry clicking of a cicada, a sound that out here often preceded a strike. Billy lowered his voice, his famous charisma hardening into steely sincerity. "You came to an outlaw for justice, Grace. You know what that means. It means rough hands and quick ends. It means what's done can't be undone by the law, only by the bullet. Pa always said that a good man with a bad name is better than a bad man with a good badge. You got the name, Mr. Bonney. And I ain't asking for gold. I'm asking for righteous fire." She reached out blindly, and her small, trembling hand rested against the rough leather of his vest. The physical contact was unexpected, a plea that bypassed his defenses. Billy stood still for a long moment, the heat pressing in, the weight of her demand heavier than his colt. He had fought for friends, for land, for survival, but never like this, for an absolute stranger, and for something so pure as justice in a land where the word had been stripped of meaning. "All right, ma'am. I hear you. The kid don't usually work for free, but this ledger needs balancing. Hargrove's empire just got a notice of eviction." He drew his bandana up over his mouth and nose, a familiar gesture of commitment. "Where's your pa's place?" "The Lazy H Ranch. It's 4 miles south. They took pa's horse, but they left his Bible. I know they're going to come back for the house, too." Billy turned back to his gang, his expression all business. "Doc, ride out to the Lazy H. See if the ground holds any answers. Tom, you and Curly Bill take the north and south exits. I want every dog Hargrove's got accounted for." As Doc Holliday rode off, his gaunt figure a picture of weary competence, Billy stepped back from the girl. "You stay safe, Grace. The fire's about to start." He looked over at the second-floor window of the general store, where a flash of light had caught his eye, a brief, sudden reflection. Too high for the sun, too purposeful for a natural glare. It was a sniper's nest, disguised. Giveaway. "Looks like the sheriff's already got his eyes on the houseboys and anyone who talks to a blind girl. That little piece of glass didn't just catch the sun. It caught the scent of trouble. Doc, ride hard. They're watching every shadow move near that ranch." The sun began its slow, deliberate march toward the western mountains, painting the desert in hues of burnt orange and blood red. Billy and the core of his gang, Tomo Folliard and Curly Bill Brocious, retreated to the thick cover of a dry wash, a temporary sanctuary where the high banks muffled sound and offered concealment. Doc Holliday was due back from his scouting run to the Lazy H Ranch. Billy drew a rough map in the sand with the butt of his Bowie knife, a diagram of redemption and the surrounding ranches. "Hargrove's men are watching Grace. I saw the glint. That means they think the girl is a loose end or a potential witness. They'll be moving soon, before nightfall, to secure their mistake." Tomo Folliard, the loyal giant, cleaned his Winchester with methodical precision. "Hargrove runs a tight ship, Billy. He ain't just the sheriff. He's a king here. He's got the bank, the saloon, and the town council in his pocket. Taking him out is like chopping down the whole damn tree." "We ain't chopping the tree, Tom. We're poisoning the roots one by one. The root that killed Grace's pa is Deputy Ruger. He's the first target." A sharp, rattling cough announced the return of Doc Holliday. He rode into the wash, his face pale and drawn, but his eyes were sharp with hard-won information. "It's worse than the girl knows, Billy. I found the ranch. The place is boarded up, but I found tracks, fresh tracks, too many for one man. Ruger wasn't alone. He had 3 other hired dogs with him. They were there to make sure no one could talk, not just to kill the rancher." Doc pointed to a spot on Billy's sand map. "The tracks led straight back to the South Canyon. I tracked them for 2 miles. They're holed up in the old mining claim shack. It's a perfect spot. Hard to approach, easy to defend. They're waiting for the sheriff to give the word to burn the ranch down and run off the stock." The revelation hardened the grim resolve in Billy's eyes. This wasn't a quick draw. It was a small war. 3 gunmen plus Ruger. That makes 4 dogs guarding the kill, and Hargrove is still in town, safe in his office. "And the biggest threat ain't the men, Billy," Doc continued, his voice thin. "It's the layout. The shack sits high. We approach from the trail, and we're dead men. They'll pick us off like tin cans." Billy thought fast, his fingers tracing the topography on his sand map. The internal conflict, the risk to his own gang against the moral imperative Grace had awakened, was resolved instantly. Justice first. "Curly Bill, you got the best eye for long shots. You take the high mesa to the west. I want you up there by nightfall. You'll be the distraction, a single Winchester shot. That'll draw their eyes." Curly Bill, a man of few words and deadly aim, simply nodded, already checking the feed on his rifle. "Doc, Tom, we take the low ground. We're going to use the darkness and the ravine runoff to sneak close. Rugar is the prize. But the others, They gotta be silenced quick. They're the ones who will talk to Hargrove if they escape. Billy then pulled out a worn piece of rope and began tying knots, demonstrating the tactical plan with the precision of a seasoned commander. Tom, you hit the east side with that scattergun of yours. Keep their heads down. Doc, your job is the back window, fast and quiet. We can't let Rugar get away. He's the proof of Hargrove's crime. Tom O'Folliard looked at the moonless sky, then back at Billy. It's a suicide run, Billy. 4 men against 3 in a fixed position, and Ruger's a snake. Ruger's a snake who forgot that rattlesnakes live in the dirt, Tom, and we're coming in low. We ain't here for a fair fight, partner. We're here for an answer. Grace is blind, but she ain't deaf. She'll know the sound of justice when it rings out. As the last sliver of sun vanished, plunging the desert into a cold, profound darkness, Billy gave the final order. We ride. Quiet. Fast. And when we're done, we leave the shack and the dogs behind. We don't linger for the spoils. Give away. As the gang began to mount their horses, their forms blending into the shadows, Doc Holliday paused, looking back toward the distant, almost invisible glow of redemption. Billy, if Ruger is the key, we need to bring him in alive. If we kill him, Hargrove spins the yarn his way. The law will cover his tracks. Billy adjusted his Colt in the holster. Then we do both, Doc. We bring him in alive, and if he resists, we make sure his confession is the last sound he hears. But first, we gotta find out if Ruger's expecting company. The old mining shack, perched on the canyon lip, was a black shape against the velvet darkness of the desert night. A lone, flickering oil lamp in the window cast a small, sickly yellow glow, a beacon for the ambush Billy and his men were preparing. The wind, which had been a low moan, now rose to a high, continuous whistle, carrying the scent of pinewood and stale tobacco from the shack. Billy, Tom, and Doc moved up the ravine runoff, their bodies pressed low against the rocky earth. The ascent was agonizingly slow, demanding quiet above all else. The dry stones shifted under their boots, sending nervous echoes into the silence. Each breath was a conscious effort. The tension was a wire pulled taut across the gorge. At a predetermined signal, the soft, repetitive call of a desert owl, Curly Bill was in position on the distant mesa. Billy raised his hand, freezing his men. They were within 20 yards of the shack's rear wall. Inside, they could hear the low, rumbling voices of the gunmen, crude laughter, and the clink of cheap whiskey bottles. They sounded secure, confident in their hidden perch. Now, Curly, now. The sound of the high-powered Winchester was a sharp crack that shattered the night. The bullet slammed into the wooden wall near the shack's front window, sending splinters flying. Chaos erupted inside. "Ambush! They're on the high side! Get the rifles!" The sounds of scraping chairs and scrambling feet followed. The defenders immediately focused their attention on the mesa, believing the main threat to be from the high ground. 2 rifles barked uselessly into the darkness toward Curly Bill's position. That was Billy's cue. "Go!" Billy kicked open the back door. Doc Holliday and Tom O'Folliard burst into the cramped space simultaneously. Tom's shotgun roared once, a devastating blast that took out the oil lamp and plunged the shack into instant, absolute darkness, illuminated only by the frantic muzzle flashes of the ensuing fight. In the confusion, 2 of the gunmen fired wildly. Billy's Colt, .45, however, was already spitting fire. He used the brief light of their muzzle flash to locate one thug fumbling to reload a rifle. Billy's shot was quick, decisive, and final. The man crumpled. Doc Holliday, moving with the cold efficiency of a man who dealt in death every day, used the light from a second defender's revolver to gauge his target. He fired his sawed-off shotgun low. The second man screamed, his legs instantly riddled with buckshot, rendering him useless but alive. The fighting stopped abruptly. The air was thick with gunpowder smoke, dust, and the stench of burnt fear. "Hold fire!" Billy stood over the man with the wounded legs. A 4th figure, Deputy Rugar, had been hiding under a rough table. Rugar, a hulking man with a mean, rat-like face, scrambled out, aiming a cheap derringer. "Get back, kid, I'll send you to hell." Billy didn't even raise his Colt. He simply sidestepped Rugar's desperate shot, the tiny pop of the Derringer pitiful against the echoes of the other weapons. Tom O'Folliard slammed the butt of his Winchester into Rugar's head with a sickening thud. The deputy dropped unconscious. "That's Rugar, Billy, the one who shot the rancher." "Good. Tie him up and secure the other one. He's talking to us, whether he likes it or not." The wounded gunman, moaning softly, was dragged outside and propped against the canyon wall. Billy knelt before him, his face a mask of brutal calm. "We didn't come for land, partner. We came for a name, Deputy Rugar's. Now you tell us what Hargrove promised you to do the rancher's work." The man spat blood and dust. "Hargrove, he just said." The girl was blind. "Said she wouldn't tell no one." "And the dynamite?" Billy pointed to a small wooden crate half hidden beneath a tarpaulin near the shack. Inside, neatly packed, were half a dozen sticks of dynamite with fuses attached. The gunman's eyes widened in fear, but his lips were sealed. Doc Holliday pressed the muzzle of his own Colt against the man's broken leg. "Talk, or I finish the job the shotgun started." "What was the real plan?" "It was a signal." The man finally choked out, his bravado shattered. "Rugar was waiting for the sheriff's other men. They're holed up in the train depot back in town. He was supposed to blow the creek bed with that dynamite at sunrise, trap the horses and cut the town off. Hargrove was going to blame it all on the rancher's vengeful kin. A trap. Hargrove had planned not just murder, but a full-scale assault on the town, using the rancher's death as an excuse to seize control of the water and land without interference." Billy stood up, kicking the crate of dynamite away from the shack. His face was grim. "Hargrove's a coward. He was baiting a trap for anyone who came for Rugar. Now we know his game." He looked at the surviving gunman, his code of honor demanding a swift and definitive justice. "You earned your pay, partner. But you chose the wrong side of the sun." "Give away." Billy stepped away. Tom O'Folliard raised his shotgun. The desert swallowed the sound of the final echoing blast. Billy looked at the moonless sky, then back toward the distant glow of redemption. "Hargrove is expecting a signal at sunrise, Doc. He ain't gonna get the explosion he wants. He's gonna get us. The final reckoning is tomorrow." The hours before dawn were a blur of motion and planning in the temporary camp. Rugar, bound and gagged, lay unconscious, serving as both trophy and leverage. The dynamite, secured by Doc Holliday, was now another weapon in their arsenal. The confrontation had escalated from a simple act of vengeance to a battle for control of redemption. Billy stood over the sand map again, tracing the paths from the train depot, Hargrove's hidden command post, to the sheriff's main office. "Hargrove is expecting Rugar's blast at sunrise. When it doesn't happen, he'll get nervous. He'll make a mistake. We hit him before he can decide his next move." "The depot is fortified, Billy," Doc warned, reloading his revolver. "Hargrove's got at least 4 men there, maybe more, and the sheriff's office is right on Main Street. We don't hit the depot, we hit the supply line." Billy instructed Tom O'Folliard and Curly Bill to ride back to Redemption ahead of the first light. Their objective, the livery stable and the town well. The plan was simple, brutal, and effective. Deny Hargrove's forces access to horses and water, creating immediate desperation. "Tom, Curly Bill, you keep the fight away from the main square. Keep it tight. Doc and we're delivering Rugar right to Hargrove's front door." As the first faint, bruised colors of dawn began to touch the eastern horizon, Billy and Doc Holliday rode slowly into Redemption. Rugar, still bound, was draped like a sack across the saddle of a pack horse. The town was eerily quiet, the silence broken only by the rhythmic, unnerving sound of their horses' hooves. From the train depot, which sat on a small rise overlooking the town, a man in a dusty deputy's uniform stepped out, his rifle raised. "Halt! Who goes there?" Billy didn't stop. He kicked the pack horse, sending Rugar tumbling onto the dusty street. "It's Billy the Kid, Deputy. I'm here to return the sheriff's property. And I got a message for Hargrove." The deputy immediately opened fire. The rifle shot cracked the air, kicking up dust inches from Billy's horse. Billy wheeled the paint mare, pulling his colt faster than the deputy could cycle his lever action. One shot. The deputy dropped his rifle, clutching his shoulder. The gunfire was the signal. From the south, the clear pop-pop-pop of Curly Bill's Winchester began, targeting the horses tethered behind the livery. From the north, Tom O'Folliard's shotgun roared near the well, scattering the remaining deputies who were making a desperate run for water. The town had erupted into a symphony of violence, but it was Billy's symphony, played on Hargrove's instruments. Sheriff Samuel Hargrove, a corpulent man in a sweat-stained Stetson, burst out of the sheriff's office onto the main street, flanked by two armed men. His face was a thundercloud of rage and fear. His plan had completely failed. He saw Rugar lying helpless in the dust, and his men taking fire from invisible snipers. "Kid, you murdering piece of trash! You won't walk out of here alive!" "I ain't here to walk out, Sheriff. I'm here to finish what your deputy started." Billy dismounted, his back to Doc Holliday. "Rugar confessed your plot to blow up the creek bed. He named the men who shot the rancher. The law may be blind, Hargrove, but the desert ain't deaf." Hargrove drew his oversized, silver-plated revolver. The two deputies flanking him did the same. This was the moment of truth, the final, desperate duel. "You are an outlaw. No one will believe a word you say. I am the law here. The law died when you put a bullet in an honest man's heart." The silence that followed was immense, heavy with the weight of impending death. The air seemed to hold its breath. Hargrove fired first, a wild, panicked shot. Billy, moving with the preternatural speed that had made him a legend, already had his Colt clear. He didn't shoot to kill. He shot to disarm. The bullet slammed into Hargrove's wrist, shattering bone and sending the silver-plated revolver spinning into the dust. The two flanking deputies hesitated, seeing their leader scream in pain and shock. They were gunmen, not loyalists. As Tom O'Folliard and Curly Bill closed in from the side streets, the deputies threw down their arms, recognizing that their empire had collapsed. "That's justice, Sheriff," Billy said, standing over the whimpering Hargrove. "Grace's father got no warning. You get the chance to confess." By mid-morning, the town of Redemption was quiet again, a different kind of quiet, the silence of profound change. The deputies had been disarmed and locked in their own jail cells, Rugar included. Billy, worn but clean, walked back to the cottonwood porch. Grace was waiting. She heard his steps, and her head tilted slightly toward him. "I heard the shots, Mr. Bonney." Then the silence. "Is it done?" "It's done, Grace. Your father's murderer is in the cell. Sheriff Hargrove is there with him, ready to tell his side of the story to the first honest judge who rides through." Billy pressed a small, heavy pouch into her hands. It wasn't Hargrove's dirty money, but gold he'd taken from his own stash. "This is for you, Grace. Enough to leave this town behind. Find a place where the sun sets on something clean." "You did it for nothing, Billy." "Why?" Billy adjusted the Stetson on his head, his eyes gazing out at the vast, unforgiving desert. "'Cause, ma'am, even out here, where the law fails and men lose their way, there's still a code, and sometimes the only thing that can see true justice is the heart of a blind girl." He tipped his hat and walked toward his horse, the jingle of his spurs receding into the dry wind. The outlaw had delivered justice, and in doing so had etched a new, contradictory line into his own legend. The ruthless killer who risked everything for a young girl and a forgotten rancher.